My parents sold my car on my birthday to pay for my brother's college tuition, then demanded I pay $6,000 more. When I said no, they called me dead to them. So I left their house that night with 2 bags and one decision. If I'm dead to you, you're dead to all the bills I've been secretly paying. Have you ever been told family comes first by people who put you last every single time? Because what I did next didn't just expose them to our family. It showed the entire town exactly who'd been holding their perfect life together while they called me ungrateful. Hi, I'm Riley. I'm 22 years old, and before we dive into how I used a simple app to blow up my parents' entire reputation, please hit that like button and subscribe because this story gets absolutely insane. And drop a comment below telling me, was I justified or did I take this too far? I genuinely want to know where you stand. Now let me take you back to that text message that changed everything. I was wiping down the counter at the cafe halfway through a double shift when my phone buzzed. We sold your car. Family comes first. Be grateful we let you live here. That was it. No happy birthday, no emoji, just my entire independence gone in one message. My hands were still sticky from spilled syrups when the next text came in. Your brother's starting college. You'll cover his first semester. $6,000. It's due this week. Like I was an ATM with a pulse. I stared at the screen, my chest burning. Then I typed one word back. Oh. A second later, my phone lit up with a call. I answered and all I heard was yelling. Pack your stuff. You're dead to us. You don't get to say no after everything we've done for you. The line went dead. And for a second the cafe noise around me just faded out. On my birthday my car was gone. My money was already spent in their heads. And apparently I was dead for daring to push back. When my shift ended there was no car waiting for me in the lot, just empty asphalt and the realization that they had actually done it. I walked home replaying every time I had fixed the Wi-Fi, set up their online banking, paid a bill, just this once. If I was so disposable, so easy to cut off, then so were all the little ways I'd been keeping their lives running. I walked into that house for what I already knew was the last time as their built-in tech support and financial backup. I walked out with 2 bags and one decision. I was going to leave more than just my bedroom behind. I left something running in that house they didn't notice that night. And what they woke up to the next morning when my mom was crying, my brother was screaming, and my dad was suddenly very quiet, is where the real story starts. When I stepped through the front door that night, I already knew the answer, but I asked anyway. Did you really sell my car? My mom was at the kitchen counter scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. She didn't even look up when she said, we did what we had to do. Family comes first. Your brother's future comes before your little convenience. My little convenience. 2 years of double shifts in a sticky, noisy cafe in our tiny Florida town of Sunset Harbor reduced to convenience, because it didn't fit her idea of sacrifice. You didn't pay for it, I said, voice shaking. I did. Every dollar. My dad came around the corner from the living room, TV still blaring some game behind him. You live under our roof, he snapped. You eat our food. You don't get to throw a tantrum because we made a decision for the good of this family. I laughed, but it came out broken. You made a decision for your favorite, I said. You didn't sell his gaming setup. You didn't sell anything you paid for. You sold the one thing that was mine. My mom, Catherine, finally looked at me then, eyes cold and tired. You're the oldest, Riley. That's what being the oldest means. You give back. Tyler has a shot at something better. You can take the bus or walk. People survive without cars. She said it like she hadn't been bragging for months to her friends about how responsible I was, how I handled everything online for them. You could have asked me, I said. You didn't have to decide. My money and my car belonged to him. My dad, Robert, stepped closer, that vein in his neck popping. We don't have to ask permission of a child, he said. We kept you afloat for 22 years. $6,000 in a used car is nothing compared to what we poured into you. You owe this family. There was not love, not gratitude. A ledger. I looked at the man who had screamed that I was dead to him over the phone and realized he meant it. In his mind, I was just a tab to collect on. If I'm dead to you, I said quietly, then stop spending my life. I turned and walked down the hall to my room, his hand brushing my shoulder a little too hard as he tried to block me. It wasn't enough to knock me over, but it was enough to make me angry instead of scared. That was their mistake. Anger made me clear. I closed my door and started pulling my life off the shelves and out of drawers. Clothes into a duffel bag, laptop, external hard drive, the little jewelry box my grandma Violet gave me before she moved to the city, the envelope with my last pay stub and the printout showing how much I'd put down on that stupid hatchback. I grabbed the chargers, my passport, my social security card, anything that said I existed outside this house. My phone buzzed in my hand as I worked. It was Brooklyn, my best friend, replying to a text I'd fired off between customers at the cafe. If I leave tonight, can I crash with you for a while? Her answer popped up. Yeah, no questions. Just come. I stared around my room at the familiar mess of a life I'd been told I should be grateful for. The thing is, I wasn't just the extra paycheck in this house. I was the password keeper, the bill payer, the one who set up online banking because my parents didn't trust computers. The one who fixed the Wi-Fi every time my dad cursed at the router. The one who signed up for autopay so the lights didn't get shut off during storm season. They kept saying I owed them, but quietly I'd been paying them back for years with my time, my labor, and my login. If I was so ungrateful, so selfish, so dead to them, then they didn't get to keep using me. I zipped up the second bag and opened my door. My mom was waiting in the hall, arms folded. You're not really leaving, she said. You're being dramatic. You'll calm down and apologize. My dad stood behind her, blocking the path like a bouncer. Put the bags back, he ordered. You're not walking out to punish us because we did what parents do. I looked at both of them, memorizing the way they stared at me like I was the problem they had to manage. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm just finally believing you. I shifted the strap higher on my shoulder and walked straight past my dad. He put a hand out like he might shove me again, but this time he froze as if he realized I was actually going. I stepped out into the humid night air of Sunset Harbor and texted Brooklyn, on my way. As I waited for her car at the end of our street, I pulled up the list on my phone of every account, every bill, every login I controlled for this house. Power, water, internet, streaming services, bank portals, budget spreadsheets. I scrolled slowly, feeling something sharp and calm settle inside me. They thought all they lost tonight was a daughter and a car. They had no idea how much of their lives actually depended on me, and I was done giving it away for free. Brooklyn's apartment smelled like reheated takeout and cheap vanilla candles. And for the first time all day, that smell felt a lot more like home than the place I just left. I dropped my bags by her couch and sank into the cushions like my bones had finally remembered gravity. Brooklyn tossed me a bottle of water and didn't push. Just sat on the armchair across from me in her scrubs, waiting. I told her everything in one long breath. From the birthday shift to the text about my car to the $6,000 they decided I owed for a degree I wasn't even the one earning. She listened, swore under her breath in all the right places, then said the one thing nobody in my family had bothered to say. That's messed up, Riley. You know that's not normal, right? I did know. I think I'd always known. I just hadn't had proof that they'd actually cash out my life like that until today. After the adrenaline wore off, what was left wasn't just hurt. It was this cold, organized kind of anger that made me want to start sorting things instead of screaming about them. I pulled my laptop out of my bag, opened it, and stared at the familiar icons lighting up the screen. For years, my parents had shrugged and handed me every piece of mail and every password, saying things like, "You're good with computers. You handle it." And, "We don't trust putting our information online, but if you're doing it, it's fine." They hated technology until it made their lives easier. I'd link their utilities, their bank, their card statements, their paychecks, all to dashboards and apps that pinged my email when something was due. I'd built it slowly, not because I loved the work, but because I hated that panicked feeling of coming home to a shut-off notice taped to the front door. "What are you doing?" Brooklyn asked, watching the screen. "Undoing," I said. First, I logged into my account at the bank and moved every cent with my name on it into a separate account I'd opened months ago, just in case. My tips, my wages, the money I'd saved for that hatchback, all of it had been funneling through a joint account I'd naively agreed to because my mom insisted it was easier for bills. Easier for her? Sure. Not anymore. I left their direct deposits, their money untouched. I wasn't interested in stealing. All I wanted was my own work back in my own hands. Then I opened up the utility portals. Power, water, internet. I was the primary email on all of them. I removed my card information, turned off autopay, and updated the contact email to the one address they never checked and had always ignored notifications from. They would still get physical mail. They would still be able to log in if they bothered to reset their passwords. But I wasn't going to be the one catching every late notice for them anymore. It felt less like sabotage and more like finally dropping a box I'd been forced to carry alone. Brooklyn watched all of it with raised eyebrows. "You're sure this isn't going to come back on you?" she asked. "I'm not touching anything that's theirs," I said. "I'm just removing myself. If I'm dead to them, they don't get to keep using my spine as their backbone." I hesitated for a second, then opened a folder buried deeper in my files. The one labeled with the boring, harmless name I'd given it months ago. Budget Tracker. It started as a class project from an online coding course. Something that tracked spending by category and spat out neat little charts about where the money went each month. Groceries, gas, medical bills, random crap you don't need, which was the label because it made me laugh. When my parents realized it could lay everything out in one place, they got excited about it. My mom loved pointing to the pie charts and saying, "See, we're responsible. We're making sacrifices." She never minded me tracking their numbers as long as the story the app told made her look good. The thing is, numbers don't care about stories. They just stack up and wait for someone to look at them honestly. I'd connected their credit cards, their bank statements, even the transaction history from the card they used for my brother's enrollment fees. All of it had been quietly feeding into Budget Tracker. Before I left the house, I hadn't touched their desktop once. I didn't have to. Months ago, when I set everything up, I'd turned on a sync feature that kept my laptop and the family computer mirrored because it made it easier to troubleshoot when they called me in a panic. What they had in their living room was a slightly older copy of what I had right here on my lap. I clicked into the settings and scrolled past the colorful graphs down to the part almost nobody ever bothers with: reports and notifications. Up until now, I'd kept the reports private just for me so I could see where the money was bleeding out and gently suggest we cut streaming services or trim back on takeout. Those conversations never went well. They usually ended with, "We work hard, we deserve a little something," which always magically meant they deserved more and I deserved less. Now I changed the rules. I set Budget Tracker to generate a full 30-day breakdown first thing in the morning. Every bill I'd paid, every dollar I'd contributed, every charge at the sporting goods store for my dad's fishing gear, every online clothing haul my mom had clicked place order on while telling me we were tight this month. Under recipients, I added email addresses that had nothing to do with utilities. My mom's, my dad's, my Aunt Stephanie's, my Grandma Violet's, a couple of relatives who always liked and shared my mom's family first posts, the people whose opinions she cared about more than mine. I wasn't adding lies. I wasn't spinning a story. I was just pointing the app at the audience she'd been performing for and letting the numbers speak without her script. Brooklyn exhaled slowly. "That's brutal," she said. "It's just the truth," I said. "They're the ones who made sure the truth would look ugly." I hit save and leaned back, feeling the tension in my shoulders shift into something almost like relief. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow morning, while I'd be pouring coffee for tourists and locals, the house I grew up in would wake up to a very different kind of birthday surprise. They sold my car and called it a sacrifice. In a few hours, they'd finally see what they'd really been sacrificing all along. The next morning, my phone started going off before the sun did. It buzzed so hard on the coffee table in Brooklyn's living room that it slid, bumped against my empty water bottle and woke me up. For a second I forgot where I was. Then I saw Brooklyn's ugly beige ceiling instead of my old bedroom, and it all came back in a rush. I grabbed my phone. Missed calls from Mom. Missed calls from Dad. A string of texts from my little brother Tyler. A few from my Aunt Stephanie. Even one from my Grandma Violet, who usually only texted, "Happy Easter," and "Love you, honey," twice a year. The notification bar was a wall of red. I opened the family group chat first, the one my mom used like her personal PR channel. The last message before last night had been a picture of Tyler's college acceptance letter with a caption about how proud she was and something like, "Our sacrifices are worth it." The new messages were nothing like that. "What is this, Catherine?" From my aunt. "Why does this thing say Riley paid half your mortgage for 3 months?" From another relative. "Are these numbers real?" From my grandma. Above all of that, there was a forwarded email I recognized instantly. Clean white background, blue header, the logo I had thrown together for my little project. Budget Tracker. Monthly breakdown underneath. Lines and charts and percentages. Under user, Thompson household, my app had laid everything out in brutal, simple rows. My contributions in one column, my parents in another. What went to actual bills in green. What went to discretionary spending in red. Dates, stamps, amounts, categories like utilities, groceries, tuition, and my personal favorite, non-essential leisure, which is where my dad's fishing gear and my mom's online shopping trips lived. Someone had hit reply all. That someone was Stephanie. I thought Riley was barely helping out, she typed. Catherine, because this looks like she's been keeping you two afloat. I could practically hear her voice through the text, tight and hurt. I flipped over to Tyler's messages. The most recent one was in all caps. What did you do? Then another right after, Mom is crying her eyes out. And then, Dad is outside yelling at the neighbor about some stupid computer and false numbers. I rubbed my face and typed back. I didn't fake anything. It's literally your bank and card statements. Those numbers are theirs. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again as he tried to figure out what to say. While I waited, I picked a random call and answered. It was Aunt Stephanie. She didn't bother with hello. Riley, sweetie, are you safe? She asked, voice shaking. Yes, I said. I'm with Brooklyn. Good, she said, and I heard her exhale like she'd been holding her breath all morning. Then her tone changed, sharper. Now you tell me, did your parents really sell your car to pay Tyler's tuition after you paid for most of it yourself? That word most stung. All, I said. I paid for all of it. They registered it in Mom's name to save on insurance and then they sold it without asking me. The app just shows how often something like that has happened. Stephanie was quiet for a beat. In the background, I heard dishes clinking and the low hum of her bakery. Your mother told us you stormed out because you didn't want to help your brother, she said finally. She said you refused to contribute anything and she was tired of your attitude. I laughed and there was no humor in it. She's known the passwords to that app for months, I said. She's seen the charts every time I tried to talk about cutting back. She liked looking at the parts that made her feel noble. She just didn't expect anyone else to see the rest. Stephanie swore softly. Your grandma got that email, she said. So did Marcus. So did half the people your mom brags to. Your dad is in the yard right now yelling that some hacker broke into their finances. I pictured my dad standing in the patchy grass of our front lawn, red in the face, waving his arms at poor Mr. Patterson next door, insisting a simple spending report was some kind of cyber attack. Meanwhile, my mom would be in the kitchen, phone in hand, trying to delete emails that had already been opened, screenshotted, shared. I didn't hack anything, I said. They asked me to set all of that up. I just stopped hiding the receipts. After I hung up, Brooklyn padded out from her room, hair a mess, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Judging by your face, it's going exactly how I thought it would, she said, handing me one. I held up my phone like evidence. The app sent the report, I said. My mom's crying. My dad's blaming hackers. My aunt sounds like someone just took her blinders off with a crowbar. Brooklyn took a sip. And Tyler, she asked right on cue. Another text came in. Dad just tried to rip the computer cord out of the wall, Tyler wrote, but Grandma already called him. She asked why you've been paying so much. She's pissed. A second message followed. I had no idea it was that bad, Riley. I thought you just covered the Wi-Fi sometimes. He's saying you did this to embarrass him. I typed back. I did this so everyone would stop believing his version of the story. I'm not asking anyone to pick sides. I'm just not taking the blame alone anymore. 3 dots appeared again. This time the reply was smaller. He keeps asking me if I knew, Tyler sent. I didn't. I swear I didn't. I believed him. He'd been the golden child, sure, but he'd also been the most sheltered. When you're busy being the future of the family, nobody hands you the bills. I know, I wrote. But now you do. I set the phone down and looked at Brooklyn. Outside her window, Sunset Harbor was just waking up. The sky streaked with pink over the water. Tourists already trickling toward the beach. Somewhere across town, in a house I had walked out of less than 12 hours ago, my parents were scrambling, spinning, trying to put a lid back on a truth they'd spent years covering up with the words, family comes first. It turned out that when you take the person holding everything together, pull her out and then turn the lights on, the cracks don't just show. They echo. And this was only the first morning. By the time I finished my shift that afternoon, my phone looked like it had been through a war. The family chat was no longer just confused questions. It was full-on damage control. My mom was firing off messages about misleading data and Riley twisting things, trying to shove the numbers back into a story that made her the martyr again. But now there were screenshots in the mix. Circled totals, highlighted lines where my name and my card showed up next to mortgage payments, utility bills and Tyler's enrollment fee. My Aunt Stephanie had dropped the politeness. "Catherine, it literally shows Riley's card number," she wrote. "That's not helping a little with Wi-Fi. That's paying your electricity." One of my cousins who never said anything in the chat finally chimed in with, "Wait, you guys told us you were covering everything on your own. We offered to help and you said no." My mom rattled off something about pride and not wanting to burden anyone. My dad, of course, sent a voice message instead of typing, his voice angry and furious as he insisted, "The app doesn't capture everything, and Riley's leaving out the support we gave her." I didn't bother listening twice. The story was the same as always. We fed you. We clothed you. We put a roof over your head. Therefore, every sacrifice you make is just paying us back with interest. I was in the tiny employee break room at the cafe, staring at the flood of messages when Tyler walked in. For a second my brain lagged. Seeing him there in his faded hoodie and backward cap, looking smaller than I remembered even though he was technically taller than me now, felt wrong in this space that had always been mine. "Hey," he said, hovering in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to come in. "Brooklyn told me what shift you were on." I biked. I glanced at the clock. "You rode your bike all the way from the house?" I asked. He shrugged. "Dad took the truck," he said. "Mom's car is blocked in because Marcus parked behind us when he came over to yell." He tried to make it a joke, but his eyes were red like he'd either been crying or yelling or both. I motioned for him to sit. "So," I said, "you saw the email." He laughed once, a sharp exhale. "Saw it," he said. "Grandma printed it. She showed it to Dad on FaceTime and asked him why his daughter was paying his mortgage while he was telling everyone she was selfish." I blinked. The mental picture of my tiny grandmother holding up a stack of paper to the screen like evidence in a trial nearly made me smile. "How did he take that?" I asked. "Badly," Tyler said. "He smashed his coffee mug in the sink. Then he told Grandma you were manipulating the numbers. She told him numbers can't be manipulated if they come straight from his bank, and told him to stop insulting her intelligence." For the first time, I felt a flicker of vindication that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with not feeling crazy. "What about Mom?" I asked. He looked down at his hands. "She's been crying all day," he said. "Calling everyone trying to explain but nobody's buying it. Aunt Stephanie came over and asked her to her face why she never mentioned you paying so much, why she told everyone you were just freeloading." He swallowed. "Mom said you insisted on paying extra, that you wouldn't take no for an answer." I almost choked. "Yeah, because I didn't want the power shut off," I said. "I didn't want you waking up in a house with no AC in August because they forgot to mail a check." "I know," Tyler said quickly. "I know that now." He picked at a loose thread on his sleeve. "They keep asking me if I knew. Grandma asked me if I saw you paying online. I didn't know what to say. I'm not blind, Riley. But they never told me anything. They just said we were all struggling and that you didn't really understand how much things cost." The irony of being painted as the one who didn't understand money when I was the one watching every dollar move through their accounts hit hard. "Do you want to know the part that really made Grandma mad?" Tyler asked. He pulled out his phone, scrolled and held it out to me. It was a screenshot of a single line item highlighted in yellow. It wasn't the mortgage or the electric bill. It was a series of purchases from a sporting goods store and an online clothing site, stacked back to back a few days after I'd covered their past due notice on the power bill. Next to that, in the report notes, Budget Tracker had flagged, "Discretionary spending increased 40% this week after essential bills paid by secondary user." My app didn't judge. It just reported behavior. But for someone like Grandma, seeing "after essential bills paid by secondary user" next to a spree of treats had clearly hit a nerve. She asked Dad, Tyler said quietly, "So, you had money for fishing poles and new purses, but not for your own light bill?" He didn't have an answer. I sat back letting that sink in. For years I'd been gaslit into thinking I was overreacting, that maybe I was being dramatic for feeling used. Seeing it spelled out in plain language for the people they respected made me feel, for once, like I wasn't standing alone in a fun house of warped mirrors. "What do you want, Tyler?" I asked finally. "Like actually want. Not what they want you to say." He fidgeted, then blurted, "I don't want to go to Coastal State for business." He avoided my eyes. I told them that in the car once. Dad turned the radio up and said, "You'll thank me later." Mom cried and said we were all sacrificing so I could have a real chance. He looked up finally and he just looked tired. I like drawing. I like designing things. I wanted to go to the community college downtown, take art and design classes, maybe learn game development. But every time I brought it up they said, we're not wasting money on some hobby. Business is stable. I let that hang there. The same we that had sold my car for his future while buying themselves toys and calling it stress relief. So right now, I said slowly, they're trying to guilt me over $6,000 for a degree you're not even sure you want, with money I already gave them in rent and bills. Tyler winced. Yeah, he said. When you say it like that it sounds honest. I offered. He huffed a laugh. Look, he said, leaning forward, urgency in his face. I didn't come here to ask you to fix it. I swear. I just needed you to know I'm not okay with what they did. To you or to me. Dad told me this morning that if I don't back him up when he talks to Grandma, he'll cut me off too. I think he expected that to scare me into line. Did it? I asked. He shook his head. Honestly, I'd rather figure it out on my own than keep being the reason they stomp all over you, he said. If I'm going to college, I want it to be because I chose it. If I'm not, then I'm not. But I'm done being the shield they hide behind while they hurt you. Something in my chest unclenched hearing that. I hadn't realized how much of my anger was tangled up with guilt over resenting him for benefits he didn't even ask for. I don't want you to feel like you have to pick me or them, I said. I just needed someone else to see it for what it is. Too late, Tyler said. Grandma sees it. And Stephanie sees it. Half the family sees it now. Mom keeps saying you betrayed us, but it feels more like you just stopped covering for them. He stood up, tucking his phone back into his pocket. I'm going to stay at a friend's for a few days, he added. I told them if Dad asks where I am he can check the report and see which card I used for gas. You know, since he loves numbers so much now. The corner of his mouth twitched. For the first time since this whole mess started I actually laughed. It was short and a little bitter, but it was real. As he left the cafe, I watched him unlock his bike and pedal away from the direction of our parents' house. He didn't look back. Neither did I. The thing about pulling off a mask is you can't put it back on and expect everyone to pretend they didn't see the face underneath. My parents could call it betrayal. They could scream about hackers and spin their version until they were hoarse. But the numbers weren't going anywhere. And now that other people finally saw them, I wasn't the only one who had to decide what to do with that truth. 2 days later, the whole town of Sunset Harbor seemed to know something was wrong with the Thompson household, and I hadn't set foot anywhere near that street. I didn't have to. My phone gave me front row seats. It started with a Facebook post from my dad that Brooklyn showed me on her lunch break. He'd written one of those long, ranty paragraphs that older people think counts as a private conversation, except he'd made it public. Kids these days don't understand sacrifice, it started. We put a roof over our daughter's head for 22 years, and the second we ask her to help her brother, she turns on us and tries to make us look like monsters. There were all the greatest hits about respect, loyalty, and of course, family comes first. Underneath, a few of his fishing buddies left the usual, hang in there man comments, but sprinkled between them were others. It's not right to sell her car if she paid for it, Robert, one neighbor wrote. If those numbers in that email are true, sounds like she's been helping a lot, another said. Someone else just commented with a screenshot of the budget tracker logo and the subject line of the report. No words. Like they didn't have to say the quiet part out loud anymore. I was wiping down a table when Tyler's name flashed across my screen again. This time it was a video. No context, just a shaky clip that started mid-argument. My dad's voice boomed through the tiny speakers. You're going to march over to your grandmother's and tell her that email was exaggerated, he shouted. You're going to tell her your sister twisted things. The camera tilted and I caught a glimpse of the living room. The curtains half closed, the coffee table cluttered with printed pages and empty cups. My mom was on the couch clutching her phone and a tissue, eyes red, mascara smeared. Robert, stop, she said, voice thin. This isn't helping. I'm defending my family, he snapped. I'm not letting some ungrateful child ruin my reputation over a bunch of online charts. Tyler must have forgotten he was recording because the view swung wildly as he stood up. It's not just charts, he said, voice shaking but loud. It's your actual spending. Your account. Your name. How are you mad at her for letting people see the truth? My dad moved fast for a man who always complained about his back. He got in Tyler's face, close enough that even through the grainy video I could see the flush on his neck. "You watch your mouth," he growled. "You think you're a man now? You think you can talk to me like that because your sister ran off and stirred up drama?" Tyler said something I couldn't quite hear, but I caught the word car, and the phrase, "wasn't yours to sell." That's when my dad shoved him. It wasn't a full-on hit, but it was a hard, open-handed push to the chest, enough to knock Tyler back into the edge of the coffee table. The phone jolted. The picture went sideways and I heard my mom scream, "Robert," followed by the scrape of furniture on hardwood. Then another voice cut in, one that made the hair on my arms stand up. "What is wrong with you?" Aunt Stephanie yelled. The video finally settled just enough to show her standing in the doorway, flowers still dusted on her shirt like she'd come straight from the bakery. Behind her, Uncle Marcus's big frame filled the hall. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world than right there, but he didn't move. "He sassed me," my dad barked. "He's been poisoned by his sister. They both have. She's turned everyone against us." Stephanie stepped between him and Tyler, who was rubbing his shoulder, trying to pretend that shove hadn't rattled him. "No," she said, and there was a finality to it I'd never heard before. "Riley didn't turn anyone against you. You did that when you took her money, sold her car, lied about it, and then screamed at her for not wanting to bankroll a college plan you forced on her brother. These reports didn't attack you. They just stopped hiding what you were already doing." My mom sobbed harder. "Stephanie, please," she said, reaching out. "You know how hard we've worked. You know we've struggled. You don't understand the pressure we're under." Stephanie shook her off. "I understand just fine," she said. "I also understand that when I offered to help, you said you had it under control and that Riley barely contributed. You let us judge her based on that. You let your own mother think she was selfish." As if summoned, my grandma's name popped up in a separate text on my screen. "He put hands on Tyler," she wrote. I saw the end of it when Stephanie called me. "I'm done making excuses for him." I watched the rest of the video in stunned silence. Marcus finally stepped forward, not to stand with my dad like he usually did, but to stand next to Stephanie. "You need to calm down, man," he said. "Shoving your kid around because you're embarrassed is not it." My dad turned on him, voice raw. "You too," he demanded. "You're going to take their side?" Marcus spread his hands. "I'm taking the side of not assaulting your own son in front of half the family," he said. "And I'm taking the side of math. Those numbers don't lie." The video cut off after that, but the text kept coming. Mr. Patterson, the neighbor, posted in the local community group asking if anyone could help the Thompson family figure out how to access their online accounts because they seemed to be having a hard time with their computer. It was couched as a polite request, but everyone in town reads between the lines. In a place like Sunset Harbor, the fastest currency isn't money, it's reputation. And my parents had just taken a massive hit. Back at Brooklands, we watched the social media threads unravel like a slow-motion car crash. People asked gentle questions at first, then sharper ones as more screenshots and half-heard stories leaked out. My dad replied to a few comments, insisting the app was biased, and that it didn't show how much he'd given us emotionally. Someone responded, "You can't pay the light bill with emotional deposits, Robert." Brooklyn laughed out loud at that one, then clapped a hand over her mouth. "Sorry," she said. "I know this is your family. It's just, they really thought nobody would ever call them out, didn't they?" I stared at my phone, feeling equal parts sick and vindicated. "They built everything on the idea that nobody would ever see the receipts," I said. "They thought family meant they could do whatever they wanted and we'd just keep smiling in pictures." That night, Tyler sent one more text. "Staying with a friend for a few days," he wrote. "Grandma offered to come get me, but I told her to wait. I don't want her in the crossfire." A few minutes later he added, "Dad said if I walk out I'm choosing you over them." I told him I'm choosing not to get shoved again because he can't handle being wrong. I told him he could stay with Brooklyn and me if he needed to. He sent back a simple "I know" and a heart. When I finally closed my eyes in Brooklyn's dim living room, the hum of her old fridge in the background, I knew this wasn't over. My parents would keep spinning, keep clawing at whatever control they had left. They still hadn't figured out exactly how that bland little program on their computer had outed them to the whole family. They thought they were just dealing with one bad email. They hadn't realized yet that Budget Tracker was still quietly watching, still logging, still ready to send the next report to the same inboxes they were desperately trying to clean up. They'd spent years telling me family comes first. In the morning they were going to learn what it felt like when the truth came first instead. And there was no delete button big enough to make it go away. Sunday morning the town was quiet in that way it always was before church and boat engines, but my phone wasn't. I was in the back of the cafe restocking cups when it started buzzing non-stop again. I glanced at the clock. Right on schedule. Budget Tracker's second report had just gone out. The first one had detonated inside the family. This one went wider. Last night after Brooklyn went to bed, I'd sat on her couch and adjusted one small setting. Recipients, same list. Frequency, weekly. Additional summary, include any new late fees, overdrafts, or past due notices since the last report. I didn't add any commentary. I didn't have to. The system just did what it was designed to do, show the truth in numbers. I wiped my hands on my apron and checked my messages. Tyler had sent a video again, this time with the caption, "You did say the next morning, right?" I hit play. The shot was shaky, like he'd propped his phone against something on the counter. I saw our kitchen, the one I grew up in, now looking like a crime scene made of paper. Printed emails, bills, and bank statements covered the table. My mom was standing in the middle of it, phone in one hand, the other pressed to her mouth as she cried. Not a delicate tear trickle, but full-body sobs that shook her shoulders. "They all got it again," she wailed. "My Bible study group, the ladies from work, even Pastor Dan. Why would she do this to us?" In the background I heard my dad yelling from outside. Tyler moved the camera toward the window. Robert was out on the front lawn in yesterday's t-shirt, pacing like a caged animal, phone clutched in his hand as he talked to somebody on speaker. "I don't understand these charges," he was saying. "They're making it look like we're behind on everything. I need you to come over and help me fix this. I'll pay you. I just need this gone." The voice on the other end belonged to Mr. Patterson. "Robert, I already told you," he said, sounding tired. "It's your bank, your bills. I can't change them. You've got a power disconnection notice and your water bill is 2 months late. You need to call the companies, not me." My dad ran a hand through his hair, looking around like the whole street was watching, which, knowing Sunset Harbor, they probably were. "Please, man," he said, the edge in his voice collapsing into something small and desperate. "I don't know how to do this online crap. Riley always did it. I can't have everyone thinking I can't take care of my own family." Inside, Tyler's camera swung back to my mom. She was scrolling through her emails, scanning the subject lines out loud between sobs. "Budget Tracker detailed update," she read. "Payment past due. Late fee applied. Insufficient funds. Declined transaction at." Oh my God. She dropped the phone like it had burned her, grabbed the edge of the table and started crying harder. "They're going to think we're trash," she choked. "They're going to think we're liars." Tyler set the phone up more steadily and stepped into frame. "Mom, they don't think anything new," he said quietly. "They just finally see what Riley's been seeing for years." She looked at him like he'd slapped her. "You're just like her," she snapped. "You're ungrateful. After everything we've given you, you side with the one who humiliated us." "She didn't humiliate you," Tyler shot back. "You did when you humiliated her for saying no. You sold her car on her birthday and called it family." Another notification flashed on my own phone. An email from Grandma Violet, CC'd to me, my parents, and Aunt Stephanie. "I have seen enough," she wrote. "I will not be sending any more money to bail you out of bills while you buy non-essentials and punish Riley for telling the truth. This is financial abuse, Catherine. I raised you better." That word sat there in black and white. Abuse. Not just a misunderstanding or a rough patch. Abuse. I watched my mom reread it on Tyler's screen. She slid into a chair like her legs couldn't hold her up anymore, fresh tears spilling over. "She's cutting us off," she whispered. "My own mother is cutting us off because of you." My dad stomped back inside, slamming the door so hard a stack of papers toppled. "Good," he grunted. "We don't need her. We don't need any of them. We'll fix this ourselves." But his hands were shaking as he grabbed at the bills, and he flinched when he saw the red, past due stamps stacked in the report summary. Tyler killed the video and sent me one last text. "I'm done. I told them I'm taking a gap year, getting a job, and if I go to school, I'm paying for my own path." Mom screamed. Dad said I was throwing my future away, But at least now it'll be my choice to throw, not theirs to sell. After my shift, Tyler came by the cafe again. We sat in our usual back corner with 2 iced coffees sweating on the table between us. Grandma offered to let me live with her, he said. She said she'll help me figure out community college or online classes if that's what I want. She also said she's proud of you. She just wishes you didn't have to blow everything up to be heard. I shrugged, feeling something in me settle. I didn't blow it up, I said. I just stopped holding it together for them. I wasn't going back to that house. Even if they apologized, even if they tried to patch things up, I knew now what I was to them when they thought nobody else was looking. A resource, a walking password, a wallet with feelings they didn't have time for. Brooklyn offered to put my name on the lease when it renewed. The cafe manager hinted at a promotion. My coding course sent me an email about an internship with a local software company looking for someone who understood real-world applications of financial tools. For the first time in a long time, my life wasn't built around bracing for the next crisis my parents would hand me. It was built around choices I got to make. Here's what I learned, standing in the wreckage of their image and the beginning of my own actual adulthood. Family comes first only means something if family includes you. If someone uses that phrase to justify emptying your savings, selling your property, or guilt-tripping you into fixing problems they created, that's not love. That's leverage. You don't owe anyone your car, your paycheck, your mental health, or your skills just because they share your last name. You owe yourself a life where your boundaries are real and your no is allowed to stand. My parents wanted me to be grateful for a roof they held over my head like a threat. I'm grateful now for something else entirely. A locked front door that I pay for, a Wi-Fi bill in my name, and a bank account they can't touch. They taught me how dangerous it is when you let people treat your sacrifices as their entitlement. My revenge was simple. I stopped letting them pretend. So that's my story. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for listening. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because your support truly means everything. And I really want to hear from you in the comments. Was I justified in what I did, or did I go too far? Have you ever had to cut off family members who treated you like an ATM? Let me know below and I'll see you in the next one.